The palace doors splinter open. Steel flashes in the afternoon light. The Emperor of Rome stands alone, knowing that his own soldiers have come to kill him. This is not a foreign invasion. This is not a slave revolt. This is the day the Roman Empire becomes a prize to be sold to the richest man in the city. This is the day loyalty dies and greed is crowned emperor. The year was 193 AD. Rome had survived nearly 1,000 years of war, conquest, and glory. But on the 28th day of March, something unprecedented happened. Emperor Pertinax was murdered by his own imperial guards, the elite Praetorian Guard. He had ruled for only 86 days. Pertinax was a good man, perhaps too good for his time. He was a senator, a military commander, and a reformer. He inherited an empire drowning in debt. The previous emperor, Commodus, had been a tyrant who spent Rome's fortune on lavish games and personal excess. Commodus was strangled to death in his bath by a wrestler on the final night of the year 192. The Senate quickly chose Pertinax to restore order. Pertinax tried. He cut spending. He sold off the imperial treasures that Commodus had hoarded. He refused to bribe the Praetorian Guard with excessive bonuses. That decision sealed his fate. The Praetorians were used to being paid handsomely for their loyalty. Under Commodus, they had been showered with gold. Under Pertinax, they received discipline and duty. They hated him for it. On that March day, a group of about 300 Praetorians marched to the palace. They claimed they were coming to protect the emperor. Pertinax believed them at first. He walked out to meet them. When he saw their weapons drawn, he tried to reason with them. He reminded them of their oaths. He reminded them of Rome's honor. They did not care. A soldier named Tausius threw the first spear. It struck Pertinax in the chest. The other guards swarmed him. They stabbed him repeatedly. They severed his head and mounted it on a spear. Then they paraded it through the streets of Rome. The emperor's body was left in the palace, alone and abandoned. But the betrayal did not end there. It had only just begun. After killing Pertinax, the Praetorian Guard did something that shocked even the cynical citizens of Rome. They decided to auction the empire. They returned to their camp and announced that the throne would go to the highest bidder. 2 wealthy senators competed for the prize. One was Titus Flavius Sulpicianus, the father-in-law of the murdered Pertinax. The other was Marcus Didius Julianus, a former consul and governor. Sulpicianus was already inside the Praetorian camp when the auction began. Didius Julianus stood outside the walls. The 2 men shouted their bids back and forth like merchants at a market. Sulpicianus offered 5,000 denarii to each guardsman. Didius Julianus raised the bid. The price climbed higher and higher. Finally, Didius Julianus offered 6,250 denarii per soldier. It was an enormous sum, worth several years of a soldier's salary. The Praetorians accepted. They opened the gates and proclaimed Didius Julianus emperor. The Senate, terrified and powerless, confirmed the decision. Rome, the greatest empire the world had ever known, had been sold like a piece of property. Didius Julianus entered the palace as emperor, but his reign would be even shorter than Pertinax's. The Roman people were disgusted. The legions stationed on the frontiers were outraged. 3 powerful generals, each commanding loyal armies, immediately declared themselves rivals for the throne. Their names were Septimius Severus, Pescennius Niger, and Clodius Albinus. Civil war erupted across the empire. Didius Julianus sat in Rome, surrounded by enemies and abandoned by the very guards who had sold him the throne. He tried to buy more loyalty. He tried to negotiate with the approaching armies. Nothing worked. After ruling for just 66 days, he was executed by a soldier sent by Septimius Severus. What happened in Rome on that spring day in 193 AD was more than just murder and greed. It was a turning point. It revealed a truth that Rome had tried to ignore for decades. The emperor no longer ruled by the consent of the Senate or the will of the people. He ruled by the loyalty of the army, and that loyalty could be bought. The Praetorian Guard had always been powerful, but they had once been protectors of the state. Now they were kingmakers and killers. The auction of the empire showed the world that Rome's ancient values, its honor, its republican traditions, had become hollow. The historian Cassius Dio, who witnessed these events, wrote with horror and sadness. He described the auction as a shameful disgrace, a moment when Rome's glory was traded for gold. His head, like Pertinax's, was paraded as a warning. The people of Rome felt the same. They cursed the name of Didius Julianus. They mourned Pertinax, who had tried to save them. But mourning would not bring back the old Rome, that Rome was already dead. The year 193 became known as the Year of the Five Emperors. Pertinax, Didius Julianus, Pescennius Niger, Clodius Albinus, and Septimius Severus all claimed the throne within 12 months. It was the new reality of Rome. The betrayal of Pertinax and the auction of the empire marked the end of an era. Rome would never again be governed by the ideals of the Senate or the wisdom of philosopher emperors. It had become a military dictatorship held together by force and fear. The day Rome was betrayed by its own army was the day it lost its soul. History teaches us that loyalty cannot be bought, only earned. When trust is replaced by greed, empires crumble from within. Rome learned that lesson too late. The echoes of that betrayal still whisper through the ruins, reminding us that power without principle is only tyranny waiting to be sold. If you want to explore more moments when history took a dark and unexpected turn, subscribe and join us as we uncover the stories that shaped our world.